Okay, we're going to set up our files for our isometric utopia drawing that we're working on. So we're going to go ahead to Illustrator. Now that we've finished our sketching and we've chosen a direction to move forward with, we're going to create a new file in Illustrator. Now you have a couple choices. We're all doing different designs. If your design is a square design, feel free to continue with our 1200 by 1200 pixel size. If your design is a rectangle, more closely based on the sketch paper I gave you, we're going to do a 1200 by 1800 pixel size to kind of give you more of a rectangle design. And I'm going to keep it, you can choose the orientation that works for you, but most of our sketch paper was vertical. So I'm going to assume most of us, if we designed, our design is more vertical if we're doing a rectangle. I'm only going to do one artboard. You can always add more artboards if you want to do variations as you go along, but at the moment I only need one artboard. We're not worrying about bleeds. We're going to stay in the RGB color mode. We're going to keep our raster effects at high, 300 pixels per inch. The default preview mode. And I think everything else we're going to just keep right here. There's nothing else we need to do. So we're going to say create. So here is my artboard. Now, I'm not worried that it's not a perfect proportion to what I was doing with my sketch paper. I can always crop this differently, but I sometimes like to have a little extra space to work. Again, it's really arbitrary. It's up to you how you want to do it. I like to, again, work with even numbers. So I'm picking even numbers for my scale. So a couple of things we want to do before we get started, just like we do with any project, is we want to make sure that we're working in a workspace that's going to work for us. So I'm going to make sure that I go to my workspace and I stay in my geometric grid workspace. I want to stay in the geometric grid workspace because that workspace that we've already set up is going to work well because this is another type of geometric design. So we want to stay in the same workspace. A couple of things that are new that I'm going to introduce. And the first thing is I'm going to introduce the actions palette. And to get to the actions palette, you go to Window, select Actions, and then you'll see, and I'm going to pull it out. My Zoom thing is in the way. I'm going to pull it out here. This is the Actions menu. Now yours might look like this, which is fine. And you don't have this isometric yet. You have just this default icons. And so it probably looks more like this. I have put up on Blackboard. I'm going to bring that over to show you. Hold on a minute. Okay, hold on a second. Let's get to our course. Go under assignments and projects. We're going to go down to isometric design. And we're going to go into this very first folder you see here, which is called resources. In the resources, this is where you found your grid paper. We are going to grab this Illustrator action file for isometric grids. And then I also want you to download this SSR method instructions. So these are the two things you're going to download. Okay, and then once you have that downloaded, you're going to open up this actions panel, which is what, find it from the window, actions, this is where it lives. And you're going to say, load actions. And then you're going to go to wherever I'm hoping you put them in your Project 3 Isometric Design folder. And this is what the file looks like. Isometric Actions AIA. And that's what you're going to grab. And then once
Professor, how did you load actions? Because I just see default actions.
Right. Exactly. You're going to go into this
Okay.
window menu and go to load actions. You see that? Do we all see load actions? And then you're going to choose your isometric actions file that you downloaded off of Blackboard. We all there? You're going to select open right here. I'm not going to do it because I already have mine loaded. And then you will see it here. You can close the default actions. We're not using the default action. And you can see this isometric folder that will pop up and you can open it. And it will look like this. But I want you to view it a different way. An easier way for us to work with this is you're going to go into the menu again and say button mode. And when you do that, you will see that there's these green and red buttons mode that have shown up. And so I'm going to make my window smaller, and it's going to show all those default ones ahead of it. I don't need those, so I'm not going to worry about those. And I'm going to make my window so it just shows me my isometric actions, and I've color coded them for you so that you can easily see them and they don't blend into everything else. So you have these green buttons and you have these red buttons and you have a purple button. I'm going to pause here for a minute and just see that we're all there. If you want to give me a thumbs up that you all are, you all have the isometric actions loaded into your Illustrator. Okay. So these are little actions that we're going to be doing repetitively. So when you do something repetitively, you can create an action for it. So that's what I've done is I've created these actions so that you're not having to reinvent the wheel every time you go to use this. And mostly anyone who's working in isometric uses an actions palette to do it because it's so repetitive. So we got our actions palette. So the next thing we need to do, of course, is set up our grid. Now, a couple things. There's a couple ways to do this. I did create an isometric grid based on practitioners that do a lot of isometric drawing. Sometimes they use the isometric grid that doesn't have the vertical dividers. So I'm going to show you what this will do. So if you select this purple button, it's going to make a grid that looks just like this. You can then hold your shift key down and scale it as big as you want, and you want it to be bigger than your page. So you're going to go pretty big. And depending on the details and intricacy of your design, you can kind of play around and adjust the scale, that you want your grid. But this grid, just to let you know, it does not have the vertical lines. It just has the left and right. And so I don't personally like working on this. I like to work with the grid with the vertical lines as well. So that is an option. But the one that I prefer is the one that we used when we designed our isometric grids in the last project. So I've put those directions back in this project, and we'll quickly go through and make a grid the way we did it in our last project. Okay, where is my toolbar? Where is my toolbar? I've lost my toolbar. Hold on a minute. Okay, is it under this? Oh, there it is. It's under the Zoom thing. I'm like, where is it? Okay, that's the Zoom window because it's in my way all the time. All right, so we are going to make our grids like we did in our last project, our geometric project. So I'm going to walk through that with you one more time. So we're going to go ahead and go under the line segment tool to the rectangular grid tool. Once we have that, we're going to set up our grid twice the size of our workspace. So a couple things. If you're going with a square, you know that we would do it in, if we were doing 1200 was our artboard for a square, we would go 2400 by 2400. I'm working with a rectangle. So I'm going to double my width to 2400. And my height is my height is 1800. So I'm going to double that to 3600. Okay. And so we're going to put the number of vertical dividers, or actually, sorry, not the vertical. We're not there yet. We're going to set the horizontal divider to 0. Okay. And we're just going to be working with the vertical dividers. And so I'm going to go with 23 dividers. And then we're going to click. Hold on a minute. I want to adjust. I don't want to skew. So I'm going to go this to 0. Okay. So that's to 0. And then I said, okay. So here is my grid. And I'm going to align my grid to the artboard. So I'm going to select my grid, align it. So it's now aligned to my artboard. Then we have the grid selected, and we're going to press the letter R and to switch to the rotate tool. And then we're going to hit the button enter. And we're going to rotate the dialog set angle to 60 degrees. And we're going to click OK. Now we still having the grid selected, we're going to press the button 0, enter, and we're going to reflect. This is the reflect tool, and we want to set the axis to vertical, which is vertical, and now we're going to say copy, not OK, but copy. Give us our second one. Okay. Now we're going to add the vertical lines. So we're going to go back to the rectangular tool. Double click. And we're going to set it up the default size of our, we're going to make it to the size of our artboard. So my artboard is 1200 width by 1800 width. I'm going to keep my horizontal dividers to 0. And this time I'm going to need 11 dividers because I have a 1200 wide. And we're going to click OK. Oh, what did I miss? Hold on a minute. Did it not make it? Hold on a minute. 1200 by 1800 dividers, 11. Use outside, 11. Okay. Why is it not creating a grid for me? Or is it going somewhere else and I'm just not seeing it? All right, let's try one more time. I don't know why I'm not. 1200 by 1800. 0, 11. Okay. Oh, there it is. I don't know why it didn't do it. Now I'm going to align it to my artboard again. And now I have my verticals. Now, this is creating a large 100 pixel by 100 pixel. Now, if you want to have if you want to have a smaller one, you can do it smaller depending on the scale you want to work in. So again, the numbers you plug in is just how small that grid is going to be. And you might have, and sometimes I found with some of my students in the past, they would have multiple grids they would use for different areas of the design, as like, for example, maybe the exterior was a bigger grid and the interior was a smaller grid for the smaller furniture items and things. So most likely you'll have more than one design scale of grid. So just like last time, we want to we're going to go ahead and take out all this extra that we don't need. So I'm going to select.
Professor, I just have one question. For the first one, you rotate it to 60 degree, and the second one you rotate it to 45.
Nope, I copied the second one.
Okay, and then rotate at what angle?
I didn't rotate the second one. I made a copy. I reflected the second one. It's still 60 degrees. Both angles are 60 degrees, but you don't change the angle. You make the first one at 60 degrees, then you use the reflect tool and you reflect the second one.
Okay.
So it's exactly the same, 60 degrees. Both angles are 60 degrees.
Okay.
Okay. Good question though. Yeah. I'm going to go to Pathfinder outline like we've done in the past. I'm going to go ahead and clean up. Oops. Hold on. I'm going to make sure that they are color so I can see them. Now I'm going to go ahead and no, it didn't make them an outline. Hold on. What's going on? Outline. There we go. Now I'm going to make sure that they are a color so I can see them. There we go. And now I'm going to go ahead and get rid of and clean up and make a nice clean grid like we've done in the past. Oops, make sure you only grab the outside elements. Okay. Now I'm going to do I'm going to turn these into guides. I'm not going to leave these because these are now truly just going to be guides that we're working over. We're not going to building off of this. So I'm going to select my grid here and I'm going to go to I don't remember, view guides, make guides.
Excuse me, how big does the file have to be?
It's up to you depending on the design you're doing.
Okay.
You make the design, you either go square or rectangle based on what design you're doing.
I'm going.
And it can be a horizontal square or a vertical square. It's up to you.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so I've made the guides. I've gone to view. I've made the guides. And now I'm going to go and lock my guides. So now these are guides. And the reason you want to do this is your cursor will now click in to this guides. It's going to be reacting to it and working. Okay, are you all with me? Give us a minute. Any other questions before we move on to the next step?
Yeah. How did you clean up the lines?
We're going, once you select them all, you go to Pathfinder outline and you outline them. And then once they've been outlined, you use your direct select tool to delete the lines that are on the outside of the artboard.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay. So let's talk about this actions palette that I had you make. What's this all about? So here's the actions palette. And the thing that's nice about this is when we're drawing our elements, we can draw them flat on. We don't have to draw them in perspective. So let's say I'm going to start by making the ground plane of my house. Let's say I'm building a house. So I'm going to make just a rectangle or a circle. I can pick mine is a rectangle. I'm just going to make a rectangle. I'm holding my shift key down. I am aligning it on the grid just to kind of get a scale. So this is the floor, if you will, the floor of my house that I'm making. And I'm going to, just so you can see it better, I'm going to make it a color. Okay, so there's my floor of my house. I'm going to look at my actions palette here, and I can choose to change it to puts it in perspective by one click. Doing multiple moves, puts it in, so I can do top clockwise. And let's say I'm like, oh no, that's not what I want to do. I go to the red, undo top clockwise, and it goes right back to a square. Let's say I want to do top counterclockwise, and I'm like, oh, that's what I want. And if I don't like that, again, I can do undo left counterclockwise. So I'm going to go top clockwise. And so now I can look at it and say, okay, here's what I want. I'm going to adjust it to scale and then fit it into my grid how I want it. Okay, so there. This is, maybe I want to move it over. Where do I want it? No, I'm going to do it this way right here. So here I have it. I'm, just scaling it, holding my shift key down, getting it right on my grid so it's pixel perfect. There we go. Have it right where I want it. Now I'm going to build one of my walls. I'm going to make my walls a different color so you can see them. Again, I'm going to just scale my walls as a square, straight on square. So there's my wall. And this time I'm going to make my walls, I'm just going to give them a big stroke so you can see them. Where's my stroke? Oh, there it is, way down here. I'm going to kind of give it a big stroke so you can see it. So there's my wall. So for my wall, I'm going to say, that's what the left and right are. So I'm going to go right. And then I'm going to take and move my wall into position on the right side. Hold my shift key down, get it scaled the way I want it. And again, when I'm working with my stroke, I'm going to pull my stroke up here. I'm going to move it to align my stroke to the inside of my shape so I can get it locked into my grid here. Okay, and then actually I'm going to undo this real quick just to show you. Which one did I do? Stop, undo, stop, I didn't select it. Okay, so here it is. I'm going to do undo right. And actually, before I do the walls, I'm going to actually make copies of my squares so they all are the same size. Now that, come on, holding my option key down and my shift key, just grabbing and making a couple of these. So I have them and I can quickly just do each one. So I'm going to go here and go left, move it into position. And then I'm going to grab this one and go right, put it into position. And then I'm going to go with this one, left again, put it into position. And then this one, right, and put it into position. Okay, so that's how I'm using the actions palette to adjust my shapes. And this works on all shapes. that you're working with. So let's say you had a ellipse or a circular element, and create my circle down here. I can also, adjust it onto the grid. So let's say I have a circular window in my cube. So now that circle is on the grid. Okay, so I'd like you to try it and try making some basic shapes and just practice using this actions palette. And then once you have one, make a cube and make, whatever you want. I want you to do a quick screenshot and pop it in your Slack channel so I can see what you're doing. So let's try it. And once you get one you like, go ahead and do a quick screenshot and drop it in your Slack channel. Take a look at our little cubes that we're making using the actions palette. Oh, actually, we'll put it in. We'll put it in the chat room channel. That's where we did it last time. Put it here in the chat room channel where we did our last little exercise where we were doing our flowers. Okay, any questions? Go ahead and ask, but go ahead and try that. And then just try a few shapes. You can use any of the shapes. And just try explore that using that undoing shapes, redoing them, using the actions palette that we have. I'll give you all a moment for that, and then we'll move on to the next step. But I first want to just get you kind of comfortable with this new tool, exploring it for a minute. Did anyone play with those boxes when they were young that you had to put the blocks in the right shape inside the box? Anyone remember that? I think it was made by Tupperware. And every side of the box had a different shape, and you had to put your block of that shape in the corresponding hole. It is a right. We'll see better. A little big. Bigger than that. One of them was square. Square. Busy if I had more. So yeah, just do a few things and then go ahead and snapshot it and pop it in your Slack channel. In the chat room channel, I should say. How's it going? What do you think of this actions tool? Am I alone in here? Okay, got one thumbs up. Thank you, Jessica. Okay, good. Yeah, the idea is to make it easier and faster. Again, we're trying to use things that help us work faster and improve our workflow. So yeah, and so one of the other things as you're thinking about, you know, you now know how to make the grid. You can make the grid any scale you need. And then these action tools will help you, again, build your straight on and then use the action tool to put it in perspective. So I'll show you how we're going to do a little bit of that once we bring in the sketches. But first, I want to just make sure you all understand to use the tools before we jump into that next step.